I really need a new MacBook. However, I've watched like 1,000 reviews at this point of all the new ones, and I have no idea which one to buy. So I'm going to the Apple Store to test them. Did I mention I live in China? Wow! I'm used to going to the Apple Store in Westlake Village, California. Going to the Apple Store for me has never been a big deal, as I'm sure it is with most of you. Here, however, that's not the case. Let me introduce you to the Apple Authorized reseller. I legit have no idea if any of these are actually authorized. My guess is some are and some wish they were. Shenzhen only has one actual Apple brand flagship store. So for some people, coming to the real Apple Store is a big deal. People treat it like a theme park ride. In fact, it literally is right next to a theme park called Happy Valley and a place called Window of the World, where they have miniaturized replicas of a bunch of the world's famous landmarks. On the weekends, people line up to go look at stuff. No, I mean at the Apple Store. People line up, not like for a new launch event or something, like just to go into the store. Which means going to the store during normal hours is not even remotely worth it. Genius Bar appointments when you need to get something fixed are always gone like a week in advance. Oh no! But luckily, I have a dope job that gives me the time to go during working hours. So that's what we're gonna do. Something I also want to mention, I'm coming from a 2017 MacBook Pro with the 4 USB-C ports. And to be completely honest, I didn't mind the lack of ports. People always complain about dongles, but I just went ahead and bought the parts that fit right. So I didn't need a dongle for like most of what I do. And it kind of forced me to upgrade for future compatibility. However, having a card reader on this new laptop is amazing. I don't shoot 8K footage. In fact, I don't even shoot 4K. I use a Canon 80D and I shoot 1080p. 80D, 1080p. I have an Insta360 that I use for, well, 360. But 95% of what I do is 1080p. That and a bit of Apple Motion. Like in that bike share video I made, this falling bike animation was Apple Motion. And on my 2017 MacBook Pro 2.9 GHz i7, it was able to handle it, but it wasn't a smooth process. And that's really what I'm going for here. A smooth process. And included in that desirable smooth process is the wait times. I hate waiting to be doing something. Therefore, I hate rendering. Staring at a progress bar waiting for it to finish so that I can watch what I've done the way that it's supposed to look is just kind of annoying. So I never do it. Rendering takes up too much drive space, it's slow, and as soon as you change something, you have to render it again. Final Cut's background rendering makes that aspect a bit better, but it doesn't help with the space issue. And if I want to watch something back right away, I hate it when it looks like this. I'm getting so many notifications about the driver having picked up the delivery that my app crashed. And this is on better performance. Yeah, unusable. So, my intention for getting one of these new MacBooks is not to be able to edit higher resolution footage, but to be able to do everything that I want to do without rendering ever. So let's see if we can do that. Alright, so just so we know, screen recording and my face here in photo booth are going to be recording the whole time. Oh, and something else to keep in mind? I recorded the audio at the store using a wireless Rode Go 2, which sounded like this. An effect that I used in my... Wait, I don't want a 720p timeline. Hold on, no. But then I realized the internal Mac microphone actually sounded quite good. So I decided to leave the Mac mic on instead, just so you can hear what kind of quality comes out of it. It's going to be a little bit harder to navigate in Chinese. I don't know Apple Motion's Chinese stuff. I started in Apple Motion and opened up one of their pre-rendered 3D objects, then turned it into a particle emitter. My work speed was a bit slower than usual because I don't know the Chinese for behaviors like collision and emission longitude. Someday, but my Chinese just isn't that good yet. I constantly found myself going, damn it, where's the whatever behavior? Finally, I'd end up having to translate it to stop wasting time. And then for some reason, the internet at this Apple store was awfully slow, so I had to bust out my phone to look it up. Eventually, I reached a point where I realized I was unable to problem solve when I came across weird situations that I was unfamiliar with because of this lack of Chinese ability of mine. Like here, what the heck is going on with the balls? Either way, I was able to get it to start slowing down, but only after an unreasonable amount of basketballs were on the screen. Not a very scientific test, but good to know the theoretical limit for not having to render in motion. Next, I decided to make a fun text effect that I could use in Final Cut, and again, not render it. The idea was to basically make a standard text object orbit around another object, but again, didn't know how to say orbit. Thanks to the preview window though, I was able to find it. Only wasted a ton of time. Then I added some gravity and messed around with it until it looked wiggly. Then I separated the letters so they'd orbit individually, and made the white box transparent. And there we have our Final Cut template. Leaving Motion open, I went over to Final Cut. Still doing the screen recording and photo booth face recording, I also made sure that the playback was in high quality and not better performance. I started by simulating something that I would do by doing something that I would never do. I took my face camera clip and keyframed it to move all over the place. I added a bunch of pointless color changes, just like I would do on any standard video, then also made sure to add an extra copy of my face for good measure. Can never have too much of my face. Then I added some wiggly text, duplicated it a couple dozen times, and gave the playback a go. After running perfectly smoothly with no slowdown whatsoever, I decided to add another couple layers of my face because, well, you know, my face. After it continued to chug along with no slowdown, I began to worry that Apple Store Macs would delete my files from the desktop randomly, so I decided now would be a good time to back up what I'd done so far. I transferred the 5 or so gigabyte file to my T7 drive. Get it? T7? Chinese T? China? And it took about 7 seconds. Guess we know why they call it a T7, eh? Just so you know. Remember. Okay, just so you know. So next I added an extra layer of screen capture footage. Now keep in mind, scrubbing here and doing the edits was so smooth. It couldn't be more satisfying. So with 3 layers of screen capture, keyframed to move all over the place, 4 layers of my face cam, also with, totally useful and realistic keyframing, color corrections, random bokeh, and shadow effects, and 16 layers of wiggly text, well, it started to drop some frames. Okay, now it's at least dropping frames. Some frames. Not like this. And included in that desirable smooth process is the wait times. I hate waiting to be doing something. Therefore, I hate rendering. I no longer have a photo booth recording to show for this part because for some reason, even though it was clearly recording, the file corrupted itself after I clicked stop. And I recorded that. Okay. There's a good sign of quality. I tried to export the video and take a copy with me, and it wouldn't get past 0%, or at least I didn't wait long enough. Not sure what happened here. I shortened it up, took out a bunch of the effects, and it was still going to take forever to wait for it to export. Really not sure what the issue was, it shouldn't take this long. But I wasn't about to wait for that. So instead I just did a screen recording of it playing at full resolution without rendering. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I suspect it had something to do with exporting from my wiggly text motion template. I think it has to do a lot of calculation for that. Finally, I went back into Motion, animated an airplane to unrealistically fly across the screen, and then tested to see how many planes I could fly before it would start to slow down. And the answer is about this many. So in the end, my conclusion was as follows. The Apple Store is way too crowded. Also, this was the base model, the cheapest version of the 16-inch M1 Pro that Apple offers, and even still, it ran like a beast. It slowed down under an unrealistic load of unrendered footage, and we ran into some weird issues with exporting, but I don't think that counts. However, even though it was able to handle everything that I wanted to do, the one thing that I wasn't able to test is the exporting of that dreaded 360 footage. And my current computer just can't handle it. If you saw that first 360 video that I uploaded, the one of lounging at Luckin Coffee, that 30-minute video was like 25 gigabytes. And I tried to export it at full resolution. 7.5 hours later, it was at 49%. I gave up, and exported it at like a quarter of the resolution. Hence why it looks so crappy. But I also can't really imagine that the M1 Max will do it that much faster than the M1 Pro, just because it's not a graphics-intensive process, and it's all about the CPU. So I guess I'll just save the extra arm and leg and get the mid-range M1 Pro. And while it is a Wednesday afternoon, this place is still way too crowded.
So I think it's about time I head out. Maybe I'll get a Luckin Coffee.